Hello. So, my beautifully crafted empire that you witnessed in my last game came to an abrupt end because of the unbidden. Some unforeseen, uh, not a fallen empire, something like a fallen empire, uber powerful. That suits just way OP. They come in and they take everything. So that's essentially what happened. However, I learned some very valuable things in the last game. One thing, policies. A lot of people play this game and never even look at their policies. Your policies are going to impact, they're going to influence, if not directly impact, everything you do. Like, for example, I am a mega corporation. So I start with a mercantile approach. Read the fine print. Now, being mercantile gives me a bonus for my economy from a diplomatic weight stand perspective, and adds trade value and trade protection. However, it costs me 0.25 influence per month. Influence you gain very slowly. Even late in the game, like you tap out at like 6, 7 influence per turn. And it's very important early in the game. Late in the game, it kind of becomes less so. So you want to look at each one of these and say, like, how am I deciding? How am I planning on playing? Like, for example, expansionist seems really cool. You're like, wow, colony development speed plus 15%, outpost build cost negative 10%. Then you look at your border friction, 100%. So that means that anybody that you come into contact with, you're immediately going to have friction. That's not good. Supremacists. I mean, enough said. The one I kind of like, and I'm going to start off with, is cooperative. The reason, I don't know anybody yet. The first thing, and I don't want the first thing to happen when I meet them, is for it to be border friction. This has a negative 50% bonus to border friction. And sending an envoy to a foreign power to harm relations, to like make them not like you, actually costs you influence. So I'm going to start off with that. Now, your war philosophy. This will dictate who will even talk to you. This will dictate who will enter into treaties with you. In some cases, who will even talk to you. If you have unrestricted wars, okay, you might be seen as a war monger. So I always set it to be like either liberation wars. However, that automatically makes you have casus belli on any and with any empires that have a different war philosophy. So I just go for defensive wars. I'm not planning on right out the gate swinging. So like orbital bombardment. I like to start off seeming like I'm at least somewhat, balanced in the head. Yeah, at least pretending. Resettlement. This one is extremely important, and it will help you with managing your population, which becomes a problem as you grow, particularly with your first planets, because they're the ones that typically end up maxing out. You end up maxing out in your districts. You want it to be allowed. What this does is when you go to that resettlement button on any settlement or planet that you own, it's not going to have a weird like, how come it's not letting me resettle? That's why, because you haven't set your resettlement policy to allowed. First contact protocol. So let's go with peaceful. Just saying. I mean, like, I like to play as a diplomat and an economist. So I want to build a cooperative of some kind. Other people want to go out and just be straight up militant. So like, you won't have to change many of these if that's the way you want to go. Mixed economy, because I believe you do have to have a strong military, but I'm not going to focus too much economically on my civilian or economic sectors. I'm going to try to balance that out. Wealth creation, that's pretty much where I'm going to keep it. I mean, these consumer benefits and marketplace of ideas give you some additional bonuses, but wealth creation goes with what I want. I'm going to make a corporation. Robotic workers. I'm going to say no. Why? If you played this game before and you get near the end game and you haven't been careful with some of the choices that have been presented to you when it comes to artificial intelligence and robotic life, they will take over. It's very difficult to beat them. Population controls. I'm going to kind of go with allowing them. Sometimes there's a really good reason for it on a planetary level. Slavery is prohibited. I actually can't allow slavery. And purging, displacement only. Displacement only. So you want to set all those right at the start, because it takes 10. You have 10 years before you can change them again once you change them. And you don't have to really change them that often. So this is going to set me up nicely to expand my early empire, and when I come into contact with other beings, other nations, not immediately be seen as a threat that they're not necessarily going to want to engage with. Which, if you're not careful with your policies and you just start, many other species that you come into contact with will immediately see you as a threat. Envoys. You actually start out with like 3. Well, depending on your government type and your civics. See, I'm a public relations specialist, which is something I can do as a mega corporation. And it gives me 2 additional envoys right off the start. So instead of starting with 1, I start with 3. And I use them immediately. The first time I meet another species, I put an envoy right in their embassy, or equivalent of. All of these things really, really make a difference, because if you start the game badly, it will be bad for most of it. Another beginning game thing, map building. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to build like 4 or 5 science vessels. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to have them go out and explore. But the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to have them survey choke points first, and then work their way back once I meet another empire. That was how I was able to have a mega corporation be essentially as large as an imperialist empire, or like a hegemony or something. And it also helped, expanding in that way helped me with managing empire sprawl. If you notice in some of the shots from my last game, my empire sprawl is not significant, not really significant at all compared to the size. In fact, it didn't break even until I was near the end of that game. And the reason is a few things. One, the way I expanded on the map. And be careful with your star bases. Star bases help you manage your empire sprawl. So I only have 3, so that means I'm only going to want 1 in my main empire, 1 someplace in an outpost, 1 someplace on the frontier in one direction, and 1 in someplace in the frontier in another. And then that's it until that number grows, because if you go beyond the number of star bases you have, that will really have a huge impact on your empire sprawl. There are a number of buildings, there are some edicts, there is a ascension perk or 2 that will affect your empire sprawl, but sectoring And proper starbase expansion is the best way to manage Empire Sprawl. Here, if you're not familiar with the populations tab on the planet menu, you might want to, because it makes a difference. It will help you determine what you will want to build. Because sometimes you're going to have workers who are unemployed, but sometimes you're going to have a specialist or a ruler, and you're going to want to build a different building depending on the type of worker that's unemployed. And the reason you want to be careful with that is if you don't, you end up screwing with these numbers in a weird way, because it'll try to compensate for the new building that you have that doesn't have workers that are necessary for it. So it'll have workers migrate to satisfy the work need, but then that will impact the housing that you have. And then you still might need to build something for like the ruler or the specialist. So always look at this. If you're seeing here that there's unemployment, it's a red symbol. You don't see it here right now. That just says that I can build more stuff. Come here and check and see, okay, is it a worker, is it a ruler, or is it a specialist? This is how you name your sectors. One thing I like about this game is you can name pretty much everything. If you know how to get to it, which most of the time it's just right in the title. So you can get really specific with pretty much everything. As it is, I created the bio for my empire. That I set their civics, their governing ethics, and all of that. Stellaris is not an easy game, and it's not necessarily user friendly, and there is a chance for UI glut because it's very, very information intensive, but it's an amazing game, and I hope this tips for beginners at the beginning has been helpful. Play on.